file.getName. Now if I run this, it should give us some directory. Now this is based on the root of the file. So the root is going to be just a dot, and there's usually the slash denotes a directory. So this directory data is inside the root of the project. So now if I run it, you see it's just data, but this is actually a directory. Now there's also some method to check if it's a directory or not. So file.isDirectory. That would give you that would return true or false depending on if it's a directory or not. So as you can see, this is a directory and it's true. So now we want to make a function that recursively prints all the children inside this file. There's also this method. So file.list files. And this is going to return an array of files that are inside this directory. So then if I do so for each file inside the array of files, you just want to print the same thing as this. So as you could see, oh, didn't print the name. Oh, I'm doing file. I need to write F. So over here, you could see all the things inside here. So there's a directory called data. This is the file that we opened. And then it is a directory. Now inside that directory, it has a child file called JSON. It's also a directory. It also has this text file. And as you can see from this, it is not a directory. It also has a directory called text, and it's true. So now if you wanted to recursively do this, okay, of course we need some function. So recursively print or recursively do. And I will explain why I said do in a second. So we want to do something with this file. And let me just comment this out. And we don't need this anymore. So we want to recursively do this to some file. So we want to make a new. Now, public means that it's accessible anywhere. Static means it doesn't use any class variables. Now, void means it's not going it has some side effect, and it's not going to return anything. Now, you would never make a method that does nothing and returns nothing. So void just means that it has some side effect. It'll print something. It'll manipulate some object. So that's the useful thing about void. Now, recursively do. Now it's going to take some file. Just say file. Now let's go over some theory. So this is the file. Now it could either be just some text file, or it could be a directory with some child files. So we first want to check, is this even a file? I mean, is it a text file, or is it not even a directory? So if it's not a directory, we just want to print that name. So if we do that here, we do if file.isDirectory. So if it's not a directory, we want to print the file.getName. So if it's not a directory, we want to print the name. Otherwise, and we otherwise we're gonna do something else. And we know this is a directory. So once we know it's a directory, we want to check all the children and do something else. Now, of course, over here, we want to just return because we're done with this after we print the name. So now over here, we know it's a directory. We want to get all the child files. So we have this code that we wrote earlier. Just copy paste it here and uncomment it. So it gets a list of files from this, and then it goes over every single file. Now, for every single file, we want to do the exact same thing. So if this is a text file, we just want to stop there. Now, if it is a directory, we'll just keep it as orange. So if it's a directory, we want to go further. We want to look at their children. And if inside here is a file, we want to stop. And so on. If it's a directory, we want to continue on. So we already have that logic for stopping if it's not a directory. Now we want to do the exact same thing for every single file inside those list of files. So now if I run this, it should print every single text file inside the directory. Now, it's not really useful for you to just print all the text files, and you probably wouldn't go through all the effort in just using Java to print all those text files. So usually you would just use, like, for example, a shell script, like find, then inside the current directory. So these are all the files inside that directory, and it's already going to recursively print all those files. And actually, let me print the path. So you see all the, so you have data, and inside data you have a JSON directory, and inside that you have these JSON files. And there's this text file inside the main direct data. Then you have a bunch of text files. So it looks something like this. So main directory, some text file. Then inside this text file, this text directory, we have a bunch of other files. And then inside the JSON directory, we have a bunch of JSON files. Now, as I said here, if we just wanted to print all those files, we wouldn't go through the effort of making a 25-line program just to print all those files. Now, when we're using Java, we usually have some other program that we want to run, like some bigger program that we want to run. So it's useful for me to. Now, the problem is, for this function, it's only using system.out.println. So if I wanted to change this function, so as I said, you're usually not going to just print something. You want to do something else. So the problem is, maybe if you wanted to do both at the same time. Now, most of the time, your first instinct is just copy this function and just do this as recursively print and then do something else here. But there's a better way. What if we could pass in a function inside here? So we'll say recursively do, and then we're going to pass in system.out.println, for example. And then somehow we want this to run inside this function. So we could use this function to do something with the files, not only just print these things, and they'll make it clear in a second. So how would we pass in this function into this function? So there's something called a consumer. And this consumer, it will take in a function that just takes in some value. It consumes some value. So it's going to take in a file. And it's going to return nothing. And of course, I need to import it. Now, to use it, all you need to do is do function.apply or accept, then pass in this. Now, as you can see, you have an error. Now, whenever you get an error, just look at the error. So here, the string cannot be converted into a file. So this is a string. We want it to be a file. So this function is going to take a file. So now over here, we want to pass in this function to this thing. So now, how would we represent passing it in a function? So we could either say this file. Now I'm going to do something with the file. So f.get path. Now this is called the lambda function. So it's a function without any name or an autonomous function. Now it's usually easier to represent it like this instead of making an entire another function just to to do this. So the syntax is just the variable. It only takes in one thing, the file, and then this arrow, then system, then some thing that you wanted to do. Now this is a file, and we wanted to print the path, for example. So this is how we would do it. So now if we run it, it should give us the exact same thing. Now to the point, we want to not only do this, but we want to do something else. So we could say recursively do, and then of course the same file. But now, for example, we have a bunch of these files. Maybe you want to get the attendance from the students from these files. So I created this attendance class, and inside it, well, there's this thing called add attendance. So it's going to take a file, and then it's going to take the attendance from that file. It's going to add the attendance from that file. Now it doesn't accept the directory, it just accepts either a JSON file or a text file, and it would just it would just catch the error and print something if it's not the file that we want. So if we do this, then everything should work. And also there's attendance dot get or wait, yeah, print attendance. So now if I run this, okay, that should have worked. Oh, I passed in the file instead of this thing. So now if I repeat the same thing, as you could see, you get the attendance of every, like this class just handles it. It just adds the attendance, and then inside it, there's an abstraction where it handles all this stuff. So then print attendance, it'll print everything. Now, as you can see, random uses file that is unsupported, and we don't want it. Now, there's something else that bothers me. Now, over here, you don't actually need to make a for loop. There's something called a stream. Now, the benefit of a stream is that, first of all, it looks better in my opinion. So you want to convert this array of files into a stream. So you would do arrays.stream, and then you would pass in files. So now, how would we take advantage of this stream? So we made it into a stream. Now we could do some stuff on it. So for example, for each of these files in the stream, we want to recursively do something with that file. And of course, we want to pass in this exact same function. So then this is the exact same thing as that for loop. Now we don't actually need to do this anymore. We could just pass in like that. Now if I run it again, it should do the exact same thing. Yep. But now let's say we don't want this file anymore. There's something called .filter, and we could take the file. Of course, if you wanted to actually change this, you would just make another function. Oops, I made a mistake. So for example, what if we wanted to filter out the random and uses file? So we would say file, and it doesn't, and this file's name does not match the random and uses file. Now if you run, now the problem is that some my program handles it, but it's not that convenient. Maybe another program wouldn't handle it, so we want to filter out those useless files. So now, as you can see, none of the useless file didn't appear, and there's no error. Now, what if we wanted to filter it more? What if we wanted to only get the JSON files, for example? So we don't want any text files. So you would just say f the file, and the file's name does not match, for example, and this is regular expressions. So somewhere inside this string, or it's text file. So in the end of the string, it'll have txt, and this just means that this is the end of the string. Now if I run this, no more text files. So it will only take those JSON files. Now what if we wanted every section except CJ? We could say matches CJ and then everything else. Like in between the string, there's some CJ in it. Now if I run it, as you can see, there's no section CJ. So regular expression, now this isn't the best example since in regular expressions you could just do the or and stuff. But if you were to try doing this with a for loop, it would be much harder. And maybe you wanted more filters. So it's much more convenient to be using a stream. Now, of course, streams have much more utility, but I think that's enough for this video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.